Ladies and gentlemen, the cameras captured a moment that could alter the trajectory of international politics. On a stage flanked by American flags and an audience tense with anticipation, Donald Trump declared what he described as an unavoidable step toward protecting U.S. strength and sovereignty. His words were aimed squarely at Venezuela, a nation long at odds with Washington, and now the focal point of an escalating confrontation. The trigger, according to Trump, was not merely a single ship but a pattern of defiance. The U.S. military had recently occupied a Venezuelan vessel, and just days earlier, a Venezuelan patrol boat was bombed, an attack that Caracas insists was an act of aggression, while Washington frames it as a necessary defensive strike. Against this backdrop, Trump's declaration on camera resonated with urgency and unmistakable fire. He began by outlining what he saw as years of Venezuelan hostility. He spoke of smuggling routes, illegal arms transfers, and provocations against U.S. assets and allies in the region. He raised his voice as he insisted that America cannot and will not stand idly by while adversaries test the patience of the world's most powerful nation. His words were both a warning and a rallying cry, directed not only at Venezuela, but at any country considering alignment against American interests. The occupation of the Venezuelan ship, he declared, was not simply a military maneuver, but a symbol of resolve, a demonstration that the United States will enforce order where it believes lawlessness reigns. The moment was heavy with symbolism. Trump is a man who understands the weight of television, the impact of visuals, and the theater of politics. He leaned into that strength. On camera, his posture was unflinching, his tone unwavering, his message designed for both domestic supporters and foreign adversaries. For his base was a message of strength, proof that America under Trump would not hesitate to act. For Venezuela and its allies, it was a statement of deterrence, a line drawn clearly in the sand. Yet behind the dramatic delivery, the world saw a troubling reality. Occupying another nation's vessel is not a minor act. It is a provocation with potentially explosive consequences. In Caracas, government officials responded with fury, branding the action as piracy and labeling Trump's speech as reckless warmongering. President Nicolás Maduro, facing his own internal crises, seized upon the event as proof that Washington seeks regime change through force, rallying nationalist sentiment against what he calls imperialist aggression. Already, the rhetoric from both sides threatens to spiral into a cycle of retaliation, and this is where the danger lies. What begins as words on a stage broadcast live across the globe can quickly translate into missiles, sanctions, blockades, and troop deployments. Trump's speech was more than performance, it was a declaration of intent. He signaled that America would pursue confrontation if provoked, and that hesitation was not part of his strategy. He spoke of drawing red lines, of restoring American dominance, and of confronting threats at their source. These are powerful messages, but they are also combustible. The timing could not have been more sensitive. With the Venezuelan economy in collapse, its population suffering under inflation and shortages, and international alliances shifting, the presence of American military forces in disputed waters transforms a crisis into a flashpoint. Trump's declaration on camera ensures that the entire world is now paying attention. The U.S. occupation of a ship is no longer a footnote. It is a headline, and his choice to frame it as the start of something larger has injected fresh urgency into global diplomacy. As the speech drew to a close, Trump's words hung heavy. America will not bow, America will not back down, and America will act with force if its power is tested. Whether those words were meant as a deterrent or as a prelude to war remains unclear. But one truth is undeniable: with a single speech captured on camera, Donald Trump has pulled the world closer to the brink of another conflict, one that could engulf not just Venezuela and the United States, but a host of nations watching nervously from the sidelines. The days leading up to this fiery declaration were marked by tension at sea. A Venezuelan patrol boat operating in contested waters was bombed in an incident that quickly drew global headlines. Washington described the strike as a defensive measure, alleging that the Venezuelan vessel had engaged in hostile maneuvers near a U.S. Navy ship. Caracas, on the other hand, blasted the attack as an unprovoked act of aggression, accusing the United States of violating international maritime law. This clash at sea became the fuse for the explosion we now see unfolding on camera, with Trump declaring that America has had enough of Venezuelan provocations. The significance of this naval clash cannot be understated. Maritime disputes often appear small in scale but carry immense political weight. A single patrol boat may not rival the size of an aircraft carrier, but its destruction symbolizes defiance, confrontation, and humiliation for the nation it represents. For Venezuela, still struggling to project sovereignty amid crippling economic decline and international sanctions, the loss of that vessel is more than material. It is a blow to national pride. For Trump, the event became evidence of Venezuelan hostility, a justification for stronger action, and the backdrop for his declaration of resolve. In his speech, Trump emphasized that this was not an isolated incident. He tied the bombing of the Venezuelan boat to what he called a broader pattern of lawlessness by the Maduro regime. He painted Venezuela as not merely a struggling nation, but as a dangerous actor, enabling criminal networks, threatening U.S. allies, and testing American resolve. He told his audience that America must not wait until such threats grow larger, but must strike decisively while the danger is still manageable. His words were designed to transform a maritime skirmish into a global narrative of confrontation between order and chaos, between strength and weakness. International observers, however, see danger in this framing. By elevating a naval clash into a justification for warlike rhetoric, Trump risks setting a precedent where minor incidents trigger disproportionate responses. The occupation of the Venezuelan ship, coming so soon after the bombing of the patrol vessel, escalates the confrontation from an accident of the seas to an intentional act of force. Each step taken reduces the space for diplomacy, narrows the window for negotiation, and increases the likelihood of retaliation. The Venezuelan government has already vowed not to remain silent. State media has been broadcasting images of the damaged patrol boat, using the footage to rally its citizens and fuel anti-American sentiment. Maduro, in speeches of his own, accused Trump of seeking to destabilize Latin America, warning that Venezuela will defend its sovereignty at any cost. This war of words, magnified by the global stage of television and online media, raises the stakes far beyond the original. For Trump, the timing is strategic. Declaring America's dominance so soon after a direct clash gives the impression of strength, of quick and decisive leadership. He understands the optics an attack on a U.S. vessel answered with overwhelming force, followed by a bold declaration on camera. It creates an image of a leader who does not hesitate, who does not bow, who ensures America's enemies think twice before challenging it again. Yet history reminds us that such escalations are rarely contained. What begins with the bombing of one patrol boat can spiral into embargoes, blockades, military deployments, and regional conflict. Latin America, already fractured by competing alliances, now finds itself staring into the possibility of a U.S.-Venezuela confrontation that could draw in global powers from Moscow to Beijing. And so the bombing of a single vessel has transformed into something far greater. It is the spark that ignited Trump's fiery declaration, the justification for a U.S. military occupation of a Venezuelan ship, and the centerpiece of a speech designed to rally his base while sending a chilling message to adversaries. It is proof that in international politics, even the smallest clash can escalate into a crisis with global consequences. Ladies and gentlemen, the heart of this unfolding storm lies in the U.S. military's occupation of a Venezuelan ship, an act that has transformed a simmering maritime dispute into a potential international crisis. On camera, Donald Trump seized upon this moment, elevating what could have been a technical or legal matter into a symbol of American dominance, defiance, and power. To his audience, both at home and abroad, Trump made it clear this was not just a ship. This was a message. This was America planting its flag, not on an island or a battlefield, but on the seas in defiance of a government he accused of corruption, criminality, and recklessness. He stood at the podium and declared that the occupation was not merely a tactical move, but a strategic necessity. In his framing, the ship represented a hub of Venezuelan misdeeds, from drug trafficking to arms smuggling, and thus seizing it was a blow against lawlessness. But beyond the practicalities, his speech painted the moment in colors of history. He invoked comparisons to past eras when American resolve on the seas determined the balance of power, recalling a tradition where maritime strength equaled national strength. Trump insisted that the world must see the Venezuelan ship not as a solitary vessel, but as a test of whether America would enforce order or retreat into weakness. And in that sense, the ship became a theater. Cameras captured U.S. forces boarding, securing, and raising their presence over the Venezuelan vessel. For Trump, this was the perfect imagery, the kind of optics he thrives upon. America acting decisively, America refusing hesitation, America demonstrating that even in contested waters, its military would not falter. The occupation became, in his speech, a symbol of America's unyielding hand. Yet symbols, as powerful as they are, often carry weight far beyond their immediate intention. In Caracas, the Venezuelan government denounced the seizure as piracy, calling it a humiliation to national dignity and sovereignty. Officials insisted that the vessel was operating lawfully and that America's occupation was an illegal act of aggression. The Venezuelan people, watching the footage broadcast by their own state-controlled media, saw not just a ship being boarded, but their nation being stripped of its pride. Maduro's government used the images to stoke outrage, portraying Trump as a foreign aggressor bent on colonizing Latin America once again. The occupation, framed as a symbol of dominance in Washington, became a symbol of resistance in Caracas. This duality is at the core of what makes the occupation so dangerous. To Trump's supporters, it represents resolve. To his critics, it represents recklessness. To Venezuelans, it represents humiliation. And to the world, it represents escalation. Each interpretation fuels a different response, and each response pulls the crisis further away from resolution. Trump, of course, is no stranger to such dynamics. His political persona thrives on confrontation, on drawing lines, on casting conflicts as battles between strength and weakness. In his speech, he positioned the ship's occupation as proof that America, under his vision, would never be passive, never be hesitant, never allow its enemies to dictate the terms. He told his audience that Venezuela had crossed a line and that the United States had answered in kind. He insisted that the occupation was a necessary demonstration, a warning to adversaries across the globe that America's patience had limits. But what Trump framed as necessity, others fear as provocation. Legal scholars point out that occupying a foreign vessel without United Nations authorization or international consent is fraught with peril. Diplomats warn that such actions risk inviting retaliation, not only from Venezuela but from its allies. Already, whispers circulate in Moscow and Tehran about supporting Caracas with military or logistical aid. Beijing, though cautious, views the move as another example of Washington asserting dominance in ways that threaten multipolar stability. What began as a single ship on contested waters is now a chess piece in the global struggle between great powers. The speech Trump delivered leaned heavily on the idea of precedent. He argued that failing to occupy the ship would embolden not only Venezuela, but other hostile nations. He pointed to history, reminding his audience of moments when American strength deterred larger conflicts, when showing force prevented wars rather than started them. He claimed that hesitation would invite further aggression, that weakness would invite chaos. For him, the occupation was not just about Venezuela, it was about signaling to the world that America would enforce order wherever lawlessness threatened to spread. The theater of the moment, however, also raised questions. Was this act truly about Venezuela? Or was it about projecting strength for a domestic audience? Trump has long understood that strongman imagery resonates with his political base. Images of U.S. soldiers boarding a ship, raising their flag, and seizing control fit neatly into his narrative of America first, a narrative that values dominance over compromise, confrontation over negotiation. To his supporters, this was evidence that he was a leader who acted boldly while others dithered. To